Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of In the Dark. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, there's the whole intro where Murphy's returning home and everything, and then it's like, oh, she finds Jess's note, and then it's just, at that moment, and this is something I kept saying the entire episode, I was like, man, Jess literally picked the worst time, because it's like, it's kind of effed up, because it's like all three of you are in this together. Let's not forget, it's her and Felix that kind of dragged them all in this, so it's kind of effed up to kind of just put that 100% on Murphy. You do have your own fault to play in all of this as well. It still doesn't take away from everything she brought up last episode about their relationship and everything, just being kind of the toxic thing that it is, that they're kind of in a cycle and everything, but it's still just kind of like, you kind of left them holding the bag in this situation. It's almost like you kind of don't care about, them being trapped under Nia's thumb. It's like, oh, I'm a bounce. It's like, like I said, it's understandable, but at the same time, it's still, you gotta admit, kind of a little sucky that you did that. So it's a situation that now, like, Felix knows that he's going. Now Felix knows that Jess is going. Then there's also the situation with Ben still blackmailing you. It's like, here, Ben, here's some. He's like, oh, it's really not good that you're ghosting my sister. He's like, shut up. The fact of the matter is, I can't, necessarily be with the person I like when I'm being blackmailed by her brother. And he's just like, okay, whatever. It's like, shut up. Like, it's like, you don't have to be a dick about it. You don't have to rub it in even more. He's already paying you. You're getting because it's like, he's like, or you could just give me like animal drugs. He's like, I'm not going to give you drugs. And he's like, what do you think I'm spending his money on? He's like, I don't care. I'm not trying to find out what you're doing with the money. Just take it and leave, So now it's a situation of, obviously they want to, like, especially in Murphy's case, it's like she wants Nia to pay. Like, it's just because, it's like, maybe if they get rid of the Nia situation, then maybe Jess will come back. And it's just like, Nia's an underlining issue to a much bigger problem with their relationship, obviously. But obviously with Murphy, she thinks like, maybe we get rid of Nia, then everything will be okay. It's like, no, like I said, everything will still be messed up. The issue she brought up will still be very true. But obviously, like, Felix was kind of know about it at first, but he's like, all right, fine, let's do it. So obviously they want to meet up with Josiah, because if they can get Josiah on their side, they can use him to take down Nia. And they go to the arcade, and lo and behold, of course they run into Trey, and he's like, guiding Hope. He's like, oh, you two know Darnell? It's like, yeah. So like, obviously he eventually takes them to meet Josiah, because he finds out like, oh, you work for Nia? All right, lock the door. So he's talking to them, and it's like, well, how do I know this isn't a trap? You're not being wired. And the most disgusting thing happens. He makes Murphy strip in front of him, and it's just like, and you can even Trey is almost like, damn, like Felix is like, both of them are trying to, be respectful. Neither one's looking her direction. And it's like, he kept telling her to just strip down the neck. And it's like, obviously that's a very like, it breaks your heart, because you're like, shit. Because even, obviously he's like, no, you can get dressed. And she's trying to get dressed. And, like Felix puts the jacket in front of her. It's like, your shirt's in front of you. And it's just like, that was that was super fucked up, But, he's not willing to really work with them, because he's like, oh, you got a little stash. Like, Nia has multiple places everywhere. So it's not like what little you have is only a fraction of what she has. And she has many different safe houses. So it's kind of like, you have nothing I really want. So bounce, and even Trey's like, I'm sorry about it. And even when they're going back to Murphy's place, Felix kept apologizing over her. He's like, I didn't do anything. She's like, no, it's okay. You said it a million times. You say like, oh, Josiah's the worst. Like, so she's like, you said like a million times. He's like, do you want me to come inside with you, just to chill and everything? She's like, no, I'm good. Because it's so sad, because prior to all this, like, she, I think it was before this, she was obviously she was kind of alone dealing with the whole Jess being gone thing. She called up Josh, but Josh couldn't stay, so it's just like she had no one to turn to in that moment. So it's just kind of, everything just came up wrong in that moment, and it just kind of sucked. I didn't talk about it, but obviously she was telling Max, she left a message for Max to be like, hey, all this stuff is going down. To be fair, he was in like solitude. He was in solitary confinement at the time, so it's not like he could get her messages, because let's not forget, his room was supposed to be tall. So I'm like, I hope his like cellmate kept his like the phone hidden and stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't come up in the episode, so it must still be a viable option, whatever the case may be. But then, like, Chloe drops the cane off, because in Dean's, grand wisdom, he thinks, like, okay, we can take down Murphy, but that's not enough. We want to catch Murphy delivering to Nia. This way, boom, we get them both. And so, once again, it's that weird thing of, like, obviously, I've seen the actor who plays Gene. He played Eric on Snowpiercer, so it's crazy to kind of go back and forth between seeing him the way he is on Snowpiercer to see him as kind of the goofy dude that he is here and everything. Because even at one point he's like, how old are you, Dean? He's like 37. He's like a little younger. Like he was trying to like gauge that. He's like, Dean, So it's just interesting to kind of see that happening at the same time. I mean, truth be told, it's kind of like, it seemed like, once again, Riley, I'll just go ahead and say Vokel, the actress who plays Cam on Roswell, Freya, and Legacy / the originals, because she's also playing a character in a show, Hightown, so it's just, once again, interesting parallels and stuff like that. Regardless, going on a tangent. Regardless, the fact of the matter is Dean had Chloe give the cane back and stuff like that. Obviously, he's not telling her the ins and outs about what it's really about, because he knows if he tried to return it, she'd be very suspicious of it, but it makes it seem like, the drugs are never found. So it's just like, Chloe decided to bring it back to me and stuff like that. It's like, my dad doesn't know I'm here. Like, I took a cab, and he's like, sure, whatever, Dad, I want to go home. Like, obviously, just everything that's going down in its time with Murphy. Like, it's because once again, like, Murphy was like her best friend, so it's just kind of like she's hurt and confused by the situation, like what's going on with me, you and my dad. Like, the thing is, she feels like, Murphy's this terrible person and everything, when in actuality your dad is, and Murphy's just doing everything she can to protect you. I mean, Dean should be grateful because you've done so much. She's done so much to protect Chloe and Dean's relationship. Could tell him, it's because there's no guarantee that Chloe would immediately believe Murphy. I mean, she's always going to believe her dad regardless, because once again, it's her dad. But nevertheless, speaking of Dean, I love that everything doesn't work out for him, because it's like, we traced those drugs. It doesn't tie back to Nia. Because at first it was like, they got the drugs and everything. They're going to tie this to Nia. It's like, Murphy's so screwed. But then they're like, like it doesn't tie that to Nia. I'm like, why the hell wouldn't it? And then I was like, right, those aren't Nia's drugs. Those are drugs that Murphy and Jess bought outside of town last episode. I was like, right. Once again, it's just interesting. Like I said, once again, they even referenced the show in this show, Ozark. It's just kind of like, you get lucky how things kind of end up working out like that. So I just thought that was it's just kind of like a very Ozark thing to do in that regard. But I just thought it was like, it worked out for you. Granted, it still kind of puts Murphy in not a favorable position, but the chief is like, Gene can handle stuff in the meeting. You're not going, because like basically a whole bunch of agencies like DEA and the IRS and stuff like that have gotten involved, because it turns out this is where Josh went, because he's with his partner Pam, and so it's like obviously they're getting ready for a raid on where Nia's got some of her stuff. Dean shows up, and the chief was like, get out of here, Dean, get the hell out, because Dean was trying to say something, but he wouldn't listen. And then we finally find out later on, like, it's like, why wouldn't you let me talk? He's like, because if Murphy goes down, the last thing we want is her on the stand under oath, right? And it's like, ooh, I was like, I didn't even think about that, because then Murphy can start, even if she doesn't have the evidence, it's enough throwing out the accusations and stuff like that, that it's just kind of like we don't even want that coming up in open court. So that's why, like, it's like I gave you chance after chance, and truth be told is every time it seems like, Dean's got to win, it comes back and blows up in his face. So that's really interesting. And once again, it's that thing of like, yes, Dean, you suck, you lose. That's was, like I said, you're kind of hoping for. At the same time, there's a whole bid situation. He needs more money, because I guess it's just a thing of like the drugs just aren't enough. Like the amount of money he gets from Felix isn't enough to kind of like satiate his high and everything. So Felix ends up having to give him like his family, like was like his uncle's watch, and Ben's using that to kind of get drugs later on, but it's not what he wants. So he still gives it away anyway, but it's still just a thing of like, I think it's just, he's like, I guess it was like heroin or whatever, but he's like, I don't do that anymore, but he's like, just give me the pills, but it's like, this is all you can get, so I just don't think it was enough anymore. So it's just, I think it's just, once again, you're always just trying to catch that next high, it's kind of what they say. Then there's an interesting situation where Josh calls Murphy and he goes over to her place. I was like, wait, what? I thought this was supposed to just kind of stay like, it was never going to become this, and it becomes that. And I'm like, that's interesting. And I love that Josh kind of like, because like when he looked at Dean and he was like, why? I was like, because I kept being like, thinking to myself, I was like, why do you feel like you know Dean? I was like, I don't get that. And he was like, remember that cop you were dating? He got like aggressively thrown out of the meeting and stuff like that. And Murphy was like, I feel so bad for him. And they were kind of laughing about it. But then it clicked in my head. I was like, right. When they were dropping off Chloe after she was at that party, I forgot, like, Josh was with her, Murphy at that time. So it's like, that's how he knew Dean about them being exes and everything. I was like, right. I was like, that completely didn't register in my head of like, oh, of course he would know Dean. So seeing Dean humiliated like that, especially the way he was talking to Murphy last time they met, like, of course that kind of made him feel good to be like, oh yeah, look at that asshole kind of, getting what, his comeuppance essentially, so. But then the information slips from Josh's mouth about the operation and stuff like that. It's like, oh yeah, like basically the big whale, the person, his number one that he wanted to take down before he lost his sight and everything, being Nia. He's talking about the operation, about where her drugs are hidden and stuff like that. And so Murphy takes that information and she runs and tells Nia everything, and I was like, oh, she's playing super coy and everything. It's like, how do you know that? It's like, oh yeah, like I'm sleeping with an IRS agent, so it's like, okay, so they're coming after your shipment and stuff like that. It's like, oh yeah, you can hide it at Guiding Hope and everything, and just Nia almost looks a little suspicious, but she's kind of going with it and stuff. Like, all right, do you want to order room service or something? Murphy's like, yeah, sure. She's like, how you want your steak? And she's looking at her, and she's like, well done. I was like, oh, this is just the look on Murphy's face, like, yeah, I got you. It's like, oh, I'm gonna play the long game. I'm coming for you. Like, it's just only a matter of time. So obviously she tells Felix about this, and Felix was like, the fact of the matter is, and he kind of gets real about it. It's like, you act like this is about Jess. It's not about Jess. This is about you, because you found something you're really good. Because you found yourself good at this. And she's like, you're right. I did find myself being good. I'm not good at a lot of things, and I am really good at this. So you can trust me. I am good at this, but I will. So that means I will get us out of this. And it's like, whether you want to be a part of that or not, fine. But he was like, no, because for Felix, it's like, this is actually something I'm kind of good at too. So it's almost like they bond over this. And once again, this season does such an interesting thing. It's like, as her relationship worsened with Jess, it's actually gotten better with Felix, which is so, I think even Murphy probably would have never seen this coming, their relationship becoming what it is. So, and once again, things are kind of falling apart on Dean's front, because it's like, oh right, he doesn't have enough money to pay for the school that Chloe's going to, and obviously she's asking a lot of questions that he doesn't want to answer, because she's like, why am I being put out of school? He's like, I don't want you going here anymore. And she's like, why are we like not have enough money to pay for stuff? And it's because the fact of the matter is, he was getting an illegal boost. Like, he couldn't afford all this on a regular cop salary, but the fact of the matter is, he had Nia's backing, and now he doesn't, so he's got to going back to struggling. So now it's a situation, he's like, she's even asking like, why do you have me lie to Murphy? And like, he's like, stop asking questions, and kind of dragging her on. She's like, Dad. So it's like, now like she's seeing, like, once again, her dad says, yeah, he's a dork, he's acting, but he's kind of my dork and everything. But it's like, now she's seeing a different side of her dad, a scarier side of him. So I'm curious to see what that's going to be like. Obviously, once again, he's fumbling so much, like he's trying to juggle so much at once, and it's just like, just when he thinks he's got the rhythm, it all like, the beat ends up changing up on him. I completely changed analogies like partway through that. I do apologize. But it's just like, once again, it's like, you always feel good. Like I said, when things don't come up, Dean, you're feeling good until he gets Max released. And I was like, oh boy. And he's like, yeah, this is about Murphy. I'm trying to protect. Oh, when he's sitting down talking to Max about that bullshit of like, oh no, I care about Murphy. I'm trying to right some wrongs. It's like, no, you're not. Like, from the very beginning, everything you've ever done has been about saving your ass. Because it's just like, you making it seem like you've got some like righteous cause of like, I'm going to make up for the mistakes I've made. It's like, no, you're just making sure that if you need a win, because if you don't get a win, you're going to lose your job. And the fact of the matter is, you're already struggling. So if you lost your job on top of everything, because you're literally hanging on by a thread, you need this Nia thing to pan out, or you kind of get tossed to the wind. And if anything comes back late, like if something comes up later on and he got tossed to the wind about this whole like Tyson thing, like if that ever comes back up, the department's not going to protect him again. It's like, oh no, you're on your own. So it's like, and eventually it could get to the point like Nia might go like, well, we might be in a more viable position to take Dean out. Not saying that's how it would go, but it potentially could. So it's just, a lot of stuff to kind of keep in mind in that regard. Like I said, regardless of everything, Max kind of sees through like Dean's BS, because it's like, oh, remember when you were promising to make me a deal to get me transferred, but then you just kind of left me high and dry. And he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, but he's like, this is about Murphy. It's like, how hard would this all come down on Murphy? He's like, it all depends on how, it's like, so you're going to give me an ultimatum, like it's either this or go to jail. He's like, no, you're free to go and everything, but the fact of the matter is Murphy's still in trouble. So like what ends up happening to her is 100% dependent on you. So it's interesting, Murphy doing everything that she's done for the purpose of protecting Max. Max now having to work with Dean, knowing everything that Dean's done. Because once again, he can't even say the words of like, oh yeah, that 17-year-old teenager I murdered. He can't even say those words, So it's just kind of like, like I said, he wants to act like he's the victim in this situation when you are the corrupt piece of crap that led you. You're the reason why you're here, No one else but Murphy, because for him it's like, initially I wanted to help you out and everything. It was going to be my plan to use you to take down Nia, but obviously it's like that deal in the elevator was real, but just things didn't work out. I mean, your partner, kind of blew that up for you. I mean, in that, case I'm referring to Gene, but still, it's just Max is kind of going with it. So it's like, okay. And obviously, they got all the drugs shipped to Guiding Hope and everything. Felix stashed one of the bricks and gave it to Murphy, and they took it to Josiah. And it's like, how'd you convince her to? It's like, yeah, Nia likes me, which even Josiah was like, oh, that's interesting. Basically, he makes that same quote that Nia's been giving to Murphy about the whole like friendships or the death of this business. Is death in this business, and he's like, oh, it's ironic. Like the fact of the matter is, she quoted that so much, yet she does like you, and she's gotten close to you, and you will ultimately end up being her undoing. Because Josiah's thing is like, they don't have to. All they have to do is grab this stash. They grab enough of her product. Like that's what her power is. Like she doesn't have the money for it. Like this is kind of a leasing situation. So if she doesn't like pay it off and stuff like that, the cartel's going to come after her. So it's either, it's like either she ends up dead or she goes on the run. So it's a situation of like, Murphy's trying to get guarantees of like, you'll protect us, you'll look after us and stuff like that. It's like, why'd you even let Darnell do it if you knew that like, our stash wasn't going to be enough? But he's like, oh, like that whole Darnell thing was meant to be a blow to Nia. Like, oh, getting her brother. And which is like, and no one else caught that. I was like, oh. So about the relationship. I mean, to be fair, I guess like he was someone that was really close to Nia. I mean, he worked for her for 5 years, but I guess he was one of those people. I mean, I guess that's even more of the irony behind it, because now someone that she considered one of her allies, some of the people that worked underneath her, just for it to kind of blow back on her in this form as well, So then there's a whole situation, obviously, with, Murphy and Josh kind of banging it out at the same time. There's a whole thing with Jess, and Jess is asking questions to, Sterling about, like, why'd you just kind of up and go, like, yeah, with coming with me? She's like, to be fair, I like you, but also, like, the fact of the matter is, just I didn't have anything in Chicago waiting for me. And, Jess was about to start talking about her reasons for leaving, but she was just kind of like, never mind. And so that this little place and everything, they're having fun, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then she comes back, won me and everything, and she's like, I love you, will you marry me? And Sterling's like, yes. And I'm like, part of me's like, to be fair, we don't know how much, well, actually we do know some extent of how much time is, because I was like, we don't know how long we've known each other. We do know. It's been like 30 days, because the beginning of the season was like, oh, this was like a month ago. Well, it's like, oh, now this was a month later, and it's like, oh, the subsequent season has been like, oh, leading up to that month time skip, and it's like, you've known each other maybe a month, and you're kind of jumping in it. To be fair, Jess is in a very vulnerable position. Everything was like, oh, Nia was trying to kill me. Well, the fact of the matter is, I saved Nia's life. That puts me in this compromised position, because Felix and Murphy lied to me. My best friend lied to me, and almost got killed by it. Just now, I've destroyed like this relation. Like obviously, her and Sterling broke up. Then it was a situation of her and Murphy not being on good terms. Then like the whole complicated thing with her ex saying like, oh, don't act like it's just Murphy. You're just as bad as her. That kind of getting thrown in your face. Like there's a lot. And now this sudden thing of like getting away from Murphy, like, this is a decade plus long friendship and everything that they've had, even though she'd probably put quotes around the friendship just because she's like, are we really friends? Like with this destructive, like, and, toxic relationship we have. Regardless, the fact of the matter is, it's just like so much at once. And even like the fact that she's laying in bed with Sterling, her eyes kind of open, like obviously the parallels, because like Murphy feels bad because it's like, well, I do like Josh, but the fact is I am kind of using him, so there's that. But then there's also the situation where I think Jess is starting to realize, like, I kind of just like left, and this is this really how I'm feeling, or is it just because I need good in my life, because like, just everything's just kind of be hitting me at once. I just need a win. So I'm wondering, because I just think it is super soon. I mean, I'm not, I'm a sucker for love and everything, but it's like, but it's also because I think it's just because we as the audience know that Sterling hasn't told her the truth and everything, and it's like when that truth eventually comes out, which I guess Sam isn't looking for, or neither is Nia, I guess, because like that hasn't turned into a thing. Doesn't mean it won't eventually, but still. So all of that is going down. Obviously, you have Murphy going out for a little bit. She's like, oh, I was going to get some, what was it she was going to get? A birth control. And she's like, oh yeah, I'll be back in like 20 minutes or whatever. You stay here, you stay naked, you stay British. And he's like, oh, my little crumpet. She's like, I don't even know what that is, and I'm not even going to ask. I thought that was kind of adorable. Felix is locking up and not being aware that Ben is in there. He's got into the animal drugs and passed out. And I was like, oh, this is going to suck big time, because it's like, last thing you need is an addict in there with like, oh, like he'll probably try, well, I don't know. Maybe he just got locked in. Well, no, because obviously he'll be able to get out, but it's just like, I mean, the room is locked because you need, like, they put like new bolts on the door. Plus there's cameras and stuff like that, which that might play in the reason why everything ends up playing out the way it does. Murphy goes back home to get her birth control and everything. And then lo and behold, who's there waiting? Max. But Max is wired up. Gene and Dean out there listening. It's like, all right, let's get to it. Then 4 hours later, I was like, wait, and it's like, wait, Josh calling is like, yeah, because we were banging and then I told him I'd be right back. He thinks, before all this happened, I'm like, dude, this is it. Next episode, we're catching up to the future. And the future is going to be present day now. Dude, I cannot. We're literally down to hours. That 4 hour mark, I'm like, all right, I'm getting the feeling Ben went in there to steal some shit and things went sideways because Sam and them are watching recordings. He doesn't know about the cameras and stuff like that. They see that shit goes down. Or just, well, no. I'm completely scratched that because I'm like, oh, I'm an idiot. Josiah's people are coming here to get it. So they're probably like left it unlocked, obviously not knowing that Ben was in there. So when they roll up, I'm assuming, once again, like I could have sworn it was like a white hand, but it could have even, like I said, it's been a while now, but it's like the person who was holding the gun, because it was supposed to be Felix's gun. So I was like, I wonder who that could, but now I'm like, is it Sam? It might be Trey, because he might have been sent there, or it could have been Josiah himself being there. He could be the one that pulled the trigger on Ben, and obviously them cleaning up the whole crime scene, which is so interesting considering Max is like mic'd up and everything. So it's like, I saw glimpses of it and I'm like, what's that? I was like, no, I don't want to know. I don't really need to know. I cannot wait to see where all of this takes us going forward into the next episode, because shit is going to hit the fan. Already has, but it's going to hit even bigger. It's going to be crazy to see what goes down next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.